Hi! How have you been? I hope you are doing well. In this lesson, we'll be talking about deductive reasoning. This includes conditional reasoning, syllogistic reasoning, and the aids and obstacles to deductive reasoning. We all know that reasoning is the process of drawing conclusions from principles and evidences, and deductive reasoning is the process of reasoning from one or more general statements regarding what is known to reach a logically certain conclusions. One type of reasoning is the conditional reasoning, in which the reasoner must draw a conclusion based on if-and-then proposition. This type of reasoning states that if antecedent condition or P is met, then consequent event or Q follows. For an instance, if students study hard, then they score high on their exams. Under circumstances, if you established a conditional proposition, then you may draw a well-reasoned conclusion. Usually, the set of conditional propositions from which we can draw a well-reasoned conclusion is if P, then QP. Therefore, Q. This illustrates deductive validity. So, we can logically illustrate. If students eat ice cream, then they score high on their exams. They eat ice cream. Therefore, they scored high on their exams. Deductive validity or logical soundness is not associated with the truth. We may arrive at a deductively sound assumptions that are entirely false in the real world. The truthfulness of the premises determines whether the inference is right or factual. But for now, we set aside the issue of truth and only focus on the deductive validity of reasoning. This concludes a set of proposition. If P, then QP, therefore Q, which termed as modus ponens argument. In this argument, we are affirming the antecedent. To illustrate, if you are a husband, then you are married. Levi is a husband, therefore Levi is married. We can also draw another well-reasoned conclusion from a conditional proposition given a different second proposition. If P, then Q. Not Q, therefore not P. Termed as modus tollens argument. For example, if you are a wife, then you are married. Sasha is not married, therefore Sasha is not a wife. The two conditions we have tackled shows well-reasoned conclusions that can be reached. In contrast, there are also two conditions in which such conclusion cannot be reached. These types of argument is called deductive fallacy. When using a conditional proposition, we cannot reach a deductively valid conclusion based either on denying the antecedent condition or on affirming the consequent. Conditional reasoning can be studied in the laboratory using a selection task. This is called Weysen selection task, named after Peter Cathcart Weysen, whose professional career contributed to the breakthrough of understanding why we humans, who are normally very intelligent individuals, repeatedly make basic errors in logical thinking. He first used this puzzle in 1966 to study how people evaluate and seek truth. To elaborate this experiment, you are shown 4 cards. Each card has a number on one side and a letter on the opposite side. Which card or cards must you flip over to verify if the following statement is true? If a card has a vowel on one side, then it has an even number on the other side. Don't flip more cards than necessary. Before I answer this puzzle, save your answer on the back of your mind or write it down on a piece of paper. So we are trying to verify the statement if a card has a vowel on one side, then it has an even number on the other side. To do that, we need to flip over the card with a vowel to make sure it has an even number on the other side. And we need to flip over the card with an odd number to make sure it has a consonant on the other side. The 2 other cards can be left alone. The statement we're aiming to test is a conditional statement. So in here, we have two types of statement. If a card has a vowel on one side, that is our first statement. The second one is, then it has an even number on the other side. That is our second statement. The first statement is what we call the antecedent, and the second statement is what we call the consequent. So the condition can be either true or false, and the consequent can be true or false as well. In this case, they both be true if a card has a vowel and an even number, and they both be false if a card has a consonant and an odd number. Of course, it's possible for one to be true and the other false as well. For example, if a card has a vowel on one side and an odd number on the other side, or a card has a consonant and an even number on the other. So, these are the four types of cards that can exist. In order to accurately pick which card we can turn to verify the truth of the conditional statement given, we have to first understand which types of these cards can debunk or falsify it. Obviously, we can find a card that has a vowel on one side and odd number on the other. The statement is debunked. So, we need to make sure that a card like that doesn't exist. So, the first remaining card approves the statement, and the two remaining cards are only irrelevant to the statement, and therefore they are not debunked. Wayson's studies and others who replicated his experiments showed that a majority of those tested want to flip this card over even though it's unnecessary. And almost no one flipped this card even though it's necessary. This indicates that our brains are more inclined to seek information that validates claims rather than information that debunks them, even when doing so is contrary to the task that we're trying to perform, and even when those being tested were formally educated in logic. This inclination to seek only truth-affirming information and ignore the rest is a form of confirmation bias. It can cause intelligent and skeptical people to continue to hold on to inaccurate beliefs for wrong reasons. And always remember that confirmation bias is a part of human psychology and can affect you regardless of your educational level, nationality, IQ, race, gender, age, or anything else. And convincing yourself that you are incapable of committing bias is a dangerous step towards committing it. So how can we use deductive reasoning in realistic situations? Instead of formal inference rules, we can use pragmatic reasoning. It is a general organizing principles or rules related to particular kinds of goals, such as permissions, obligations, or causations. These schemas are sometimes referred as pragmatic rules. These rules are not abstract as formal logical rules, but they are sufficiently general and broad so that they can be applied to a wide variety of specific situations. One's performance may be affected by perspective effects, in which whether one takes the point of view of the person A or the point of view of the person B. Thus, what matters more is the perspective one takes when solving such problem. So how has evolution influenced human cognition? Humans may possess something like a schema device. It facilitates our ability to quickly glean important information from our experiences. It also helps us to organize information into meaningful frameworks. There are two kinds of inferences that social exchange schemas facilitate. First is the inferences related to cost-benefit relationships. And the other one is the inferences that help people detect when someone is cheating in particular social exchange. The second type of deductive reasoning is the syllogistic reasoning, which is based on categorical syllogism. It is a deductive argument that involves drawing conclusions from two premises. Categorical syllogism is a specific term which is composed of three categorical sentences. To illustrate, in syllogistic reasoning, we have two premises over one conclusion. And for the categorical syllogism, we have two categorical sentences over a categorical sentence. To illustrate that, in syllogism, we have premise 1, which is all men are mortal. For premise 2, Aaron is a man. Therefore, Aaron is mortal. For the categorical syllogism, it becomes all men are mortal beings. All persons identical to Aaron are men. All persons identical to Aaron are mortal beings. These A sentences makes it a categorical syllogism. Now let's take a look at these three words. The term that occurs twice in the premises, that is called the middle term. The terms that hook up the middle term are called minor term and major term, and they occur in conclusion. So take a look at these two terms repeated, which is mortal beings. These are called major term. It occurs one time in the premise and one time in the conclusion as a predicate. And there is one term identical to major term. It is the term persons identical to Aaron, which appears one time in the premise and one time in conclusion as a subject. There are four kinds of premises. The first one is the universal affirmative statements. Statements of the form all A are B because they make positive or affirmative statement about all members of a class, which is universal. The second one is the universal negative statements. Negative statements about all members of a class. For example, no cognitive psychologists are drummers. The third one is the particular affirmative statements. These are positive statements about some members of a class. For example, some cognitive psychologists are left-handed. The last one is the particular negative statements. These are negative statements about some members of a class. For example, some cognitive psychologists are not physicists. In deductive reasoning, as in many other cognitive processes, we engage in heuristic shortcuts. These shortcuts sometimes lead us to inaccurate conclusions. In addition to these shortcuts, we often are influenced by biases that distort the outcomes of our reasoning. So there are three types of heuristic in syllogistic reasoning, which includes overextension errors, the foreclosure effects, and the premise phrasing effects. In overextension errors, we overextend the use of strategies that work in some syllogisms to syllogisms in which the strategies fail us. In foreclosure effects, we fail to consider all of the possibilities before reaching a conclusion. And for the premise phrasing effects, it may influence our deductive reasoning. For example, the sequence of terms or the use of particular qualifiers or negative phrasing. Misphrasing effects may lead us to leap a conclusion without adequately reflecting on the deductive validity of the syllogism. And that concludes our lesson for today. Thanks for watching.